How many of you think that the New River Valley is a beautiful place to live? Yeah, I have to agree with you. And that's why we have our guest speakers today from the New River Land Trust. And they're going to be telling us all about how we can keep this area in our New River just as beautiful as it is. And our children and our children's children and everybody from there on can continue to enjoy the New River and the beauty of the area. So we should welcome John Eustace and Justine Brentley, and they're going to tell us just how we can help to do this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, again, we're working to save the rural landscape and heritage of the region. This is a view of the road going up to Mountain Lake, and I'm sure many of you have been up to Mountain Lake before. But essentially, this is the sort of thing that we're looking to protect. We're not against development and growth, building residential structures, other structures needed for the growing community that we have here in Blacksburg and Christiansburg. We just don't think it necessarily makes sense on this traditional sort of rural landscape that you see here that's forested, that's farmland. And so this is the sort of thing we're looking to protect. And I'll explain what I mean by that as we go along. Our mission is conserving farms, forests, open spaces, and historic places. All the three pictures you see there are properties that are protected with the conservation easement. And again, I'll explain what the conservation easement is here in just a second. This property on the left is a big area of farmland in Spring Valley, Grayson County. It's a historic structure, again, Spring Valley, Grayson County in the center. And this is a property in Giles County, right on the New River, again, protected with an easement. Very close to the Palisades restaurant, if anyone's ever been there. This is our service area. So, again, as I mentioned earlier, 8 counties: Giles, Montgomery, Floyd, Carroll, Pulaski, Bland, Wythe, and Grayson, and also servicing the cities of Radford and Galax. However, anybody in Virginia, people in North Carolina, I get calls from all over the place every year, and we are just essentially there and available to try and help point people in the direction of some sort of conservation program or provider that can help them if they have some land that they'd like to see protected in some way, some sort of conservation program. We are a nationally accredited organization. There's an umbrella organization, the Land Trust Alliance, and we're proud to say that we've been accredited by them, and we have our accreditation in 2013. It's really just a very rigorous sort of examination of our standards, our practices, our record keeping, how we do things. It was a challenging thing to do, but it was well worth it because it really helped us become more organized and more professional in how we do our business. To give you some sense of where Virginia stands nationally, there's a census that's done every 5 years. They're doing one now, collecting information. But in 2010, the most recent census, Virginia ranked 5th nationally in the amount of conservation that is done. And you're up against big states with a lot of conservation activity in California, Maine, Colorado, Montana. And so we're really proud here in Virginia that we've accomplished a lot. We rank well above all the other states in the southeast region, North Carolina being the next closest one at just 339,000 acres in 2010, whereas we were almost at 1,130,000 acres. So again, pretty significant numbers. Virginia, conservation of Virginia is very much a private-public collaboration. Conservation of Virginia has traditionally enjoyed bipartisan support in the General Assembly and with generally our elected officials across the state. Some of our main partners are listed here. I'm not going to go through them all, but the Virginia Outdoors Foundation is really a key one. They were established in 1966. They hold the bulk of the conservation easements in the state of Virginia, almost 800,000 acres, almost 4,000 properties and projects. They are our main partner. We do a lot of the outreach and education through the upfront part, and then we pass many of our projects on to them, and they actually negotiate the arrangement with the landowner. To give you some sense of what the scale of what we have done since we were established in 2002, is we've helped 242 landowners conserve more than 50,000 acres of land in our region, protecting farms, forests, open spaces, historic places, including more than 25 miles along the New River. This is a property in Grayson County with quite a bit of river frontage, large farm property, protected with a conservation easement. It won't ever be a large subdivision. You won't ever see a trailer park or a factory or anything else there on the river. To give you some sense of, again, the scale of what we've done, we were established in 2002. This was the map of Montgomery County. We had 8 easements, about 4,000 acres. 2015, we're talking 88 easements and almost 16,000 acres. And I'm happy to report that actually, if I updated this map today, it would be more than 16,000 acres and more than 90 easements. So a pretty significant change. There's also some areas, sort of the bottom here and here in the Catawba Valley, that we've helped get designated special projects areas. Those areas are recognized as having multiple conservation values, and a landowner in that region gets a little bit of a leg up if they want to pursue some sort of conservation on their property. So what is a conservation easement? It's a voluntary legal agreement between a landowner and a land trust. It could be the River Land Trust, or it could be a state agency like the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, to protect the open space, historic, agricultural, forestal values of the land. Each easement is tailored to some degree, there's certain parameters, but tailored to the needs of the landowner and the property. Each property is unique, and each landowner's circumstances are unique. Easements must be permanent in order for the landowner to benefit from the tax incentives that exist for putting a conservation easement on your property. Conservation easement permanently restricts that property to traditional rural uses of agriculture and forestry. Doesn't change the ownership of the land. Landowner continues to own the land. They can farm it. They can cut timber. They can hunt and fish. They can lease the land to someone to farm or someone to hunt and fish. They can sell it. They can give it to their children. And it does not require public access. We do work on some projects where a landowner is interested in public access, and that's a great thing, but in no way is it a requirement. Most of the easements we work on don't have any public access component to them. Easements also do not block public utilities from expanding. There's a process, if there's an eased property, and there's going to be development in the path of that, or beyond the path of that property, or a water or sewer line, that sort of thing to go through. And I know a lot of people are very concerned about the Mountain Valley Pipeline, and so it's important to understand that easements held by a private nonprofit or even a state agency is not going to be a guarantee against federal condemnation. And that is what the Mountain Valley folks are able to use based on the system that's sort of set up for those large sort of infrastructure types of projects. I will say that the New River Land Trust is definitely not in favor of the Mountain Valley Pipeline. We have written to FERC, we've written to the companies, we have written and met with our elected officials, some of our senators and such. Again, we're not for it, but an easement isn't going to be a guarantee that something like that isn't going to go through your property. It doesn't take land away from private landowners and give it to government agencies. It doesn't get done without being in compliance with the local comp plan. So if the county or the town is planning for development, where your property is located, they they can actually block the landowner from doing a conservation easement. And if in the future you have an easement, but in 100 years that's the only place a hospital could go, and the community's grown and needs a hospital or a school, there is a way for a portion of that easement to get extinguished and for that compelling public need to be met. It's quite a process, and there has to be a balancing, there has to be a substitution of conservation value, but it doesn't block that compelling public need if it needs to occur. Easements do come with some tax benefits. Right now, there's a very good federal income tax deduction of 50 or up to 100% if you're a farmer that gets more than 50% of your income from the land, of your adjusted gross income that you can deduct and not pay taxes on for up to 16 years. It's more complicated than that, and I'd be happy to explain the details to anybody who's interested later. We have a very generous state income tax credit, where for some of the value that is given up on the property by restricting it to traditional rural uses, people get tax credits they can use to pay their Virginia income taxes. It can impact estate taxes when the property passes to the next generation. And in most cases, it can lower your property taxes that you pay to the county or the town. So what else does easements do? Easements protect water quality. They protect land for local food production, wildlife habitat, air quality, carbon sequestration. Wherever you come down on global warming, the fact is that farmland, forest land sequester carbon, and that's generally thought of as a good thing. Soil conservation, viewshed protection, these are just some of the things that are important. And when we talk about these easements and I show you these maps, historically there was a lot of activity and we're getting so many calls we just reacted to. Whoever called us, whoever sent us an email, that sort of thing. But in recent years there's been less resources available for conservation on a number of different scales. And so we realized we need to be very strategic and targeted in our efforts. So with grant funding from the Virginia Department of Forestry, we did a prioritization project. We looked at all the properties of 50 acres or larger in our service area and overlaid a bunch of different conservation values. I'm not going to read through all these details here, but the idea was to look for areas with a lot of conservation value. It could be special projects areas, like I showed the Catawba Valley earlier. They could be areas where you're going after federal pots of money for conservation. And then also areas where we want to do outreach to landowners. And here's an example. This is Giles County. This is the map of Giles County, and these are all the properties of 50 acres or larger in 2012. The ones that are red were the highest priority based on multiple conservation values. The ones that are orange, then the second level down. One of the properties that's highlighted, the Little Stony Ink property, I'm going to talk about it in a minute, and then the property that is next to it, right here, this is the Mountain Lake property. I'm going to talk about that also. So we did outreach to all these folks in the red and the orange properties, and we just sent them a letter saying, you realize your property has high conservation value, and if you're ever interested in talking about conservation easement or other conservation programming, say through the Farm Bill or through state organizations, Soil and Water Conservation District, please contact us, and we'll be happy to talk to you about it. One of the things that came out of that was that we shared that information with the folks up in Mountain Lake. Mountain Lake is a more than 2,500 acre property that they call it Mountain Lake Conservancy, but in no real strong legal way was it conserved. We provided the information from our prioritization project to them, and in turn, they turned around and asked us to do a conservation plan for them, for their whole property. We did that and finished it in 2014. The property is important for conservation, and it shows up as red on our prioritization because it has outstanding conservation value, very high ecological integrity, There are a number of rare, threatened, and endangered species or habitat that supports them up there. There's fantastic water quality on the property. It drains to Little Stony Creek, it runs over the Cascades. Ranks high, not just on our prioritization, but on other ones. Above average resilience to climate change. And it's a focal area for biological diversity and resilience. There was a big plan, it's about 50 pages, but this sort of sums it up. Is that we strongly encourage the folks up at Mountain Lake to put in some sort of very strong legal protection for the bulk of the property. If they need to continue to run their resort, we did allow them the hashed area as areas where if they needed to put in additional lodging infrastructure, they could do so. But the bulk of the property would be protected with very large buffers around the lake, 300-foot buffers, and then the cold water resources, the streams that are running off that property. I can, again, be happy to share more information about that with you. The other thing that came out of that was, in our outreach to the landowners, was some landowners contacted us back. One of them was right adjacent to Mountain Lake with a 3,000+ acre property. We started a conversation about how we could conserve that property with the landowner, and it turned out that the best fit was going to be a pot of federal money called Forest Legacy, and that the land trust would act as an advocate and put together an application, a proposal, to try and get some of that money to permanently conserve that property. That property is the Little Stony Inc. property, again, over 3,000 acres. It's adjacent to, there's a lot of border with the National Forest. Appalachian Trail runs right along the border with it. Mountain Lake Biological Station is right there. Mountain Lake, right adjacent to it. The Mountain Lake Wilderness Area, part of the National Forest. This property has incredible conservation value. And again, you may not be able to read all this, I won't go through everything, but in the end, the landowners were prepared to conserve the bulk of it. Very large amount of acreage for Virginia, over 2,600 acres. Has a lot of standing timber value. It's more than 11% of the Little Stony Creek watershed. 15% of the watershed is privately owned forest land. Almost 80,000 linear feet, 15 miles of stream. All the streams, the water are cold water resources. All perennial class 2 trout streams, exceptional water quality. A number of wetlands on the property. Hydric soils, which means that there might have historically been even more wetlands. 32 documented natural heritage resources, rare, threatened, endangered species, including some globally rare species, and I'm going to show you some pictures in a minute. Again, a lot of research happens on the property associated with Virginia Tech, the UVA Biological Station, and there's even a Smithsonian Institute long-term study plot, which has documented a lot of American chestnut sprouts on the property. So here's some images of the property, because I can show you maps and talk numbers, but pictures tell a lot. This is Little Stony Creek flowing through the property. There's a big stand of white pine on the property. This is a picture of the property in the wintertime. Really incredible, beautiful place. And if we can get it conserved, it will be by far the most significant conservation success of our organization's history. These are some of the rare species. This is a globally rare Bentley's coral root. There's a state rare northern saw-whet owl, a warbler, globally rare Appalachian pitch pine bog with cranberries. So these are the kinds of things that would be protected on that property. I'm happy to report that it really is timely. Yesterday afternoon, I got the email saying that our proposal, we submitted the proposal last year, and the president then puts out a list of the property, the properties, the proposals that they're going to try and fund. And depending on whether you're on that list, you get funding or you don't. Last year, we were not successful. But the landowner was not to be denied. He really wants to do conservation, and we really would like to see it happen. We resubmitted the proposal, and I just found out yesterday that we moved from 36th last year to 17th on the president's list, and we should get the $1.3 million that it will take to conserve that property. The process isn't done, it's not a guarantee, but things are looking very good, and I hope to be able to come back maybe in a year and say, the property is conserved, and we have this fantastic success, and the landowner is thrilled. So, I would like to answer questions, but I also want Justine Brantley, who is our youth outreach coordinator, to give a presentation and talk. She's on a little bit of a tight timeline, so if it's okay, I'd like to put off questions until she gets a chance to do her presentation and then answer questions. She may have to leave right about 2 o'clock, and I will be available. I'm not leaving anytime soon. I'd be happy to answer questions generally about the land trust, and I probably can answer questions about the programming that she oversees if she has to leave before a question gets answered. So, just like to turn it over to Justine, and thank you very much for having us. Give us a second while we make the transition.
Everybody hear me? Is that going to work? All right. So, like John said, I'm Justine Brantley, and I am the Youth Outreach Coordinator for the New River Land Trust. And John didn't mention anything about any youth, so you may wonder why are we reaching out to the youth? And I'm going to talk about that. Are any of you familiar with a book called Last Child in the Woods by Richard Root? It's a book that really embodies kind of our philosophy about why we do want to reach out to children. It's a book about how children don't go outside. How many of you spend time playing outside or have memories of playing for long stretches of time, maybe by yourself, maybe with siblings or friends outside? And that's where a lot of our childhood memories come from, right? Well, children are not outside today like they used to be. They are inside. They are very much behind screens. There have been a lot of, there's just scares, I guess, that keep parents from wanting their children to go outside. Safety is a concern. And this is a problem, we think, because children are out of touch with the land. They're not going to grow up to protect the land if they don't know what's even out there. So, a quote that I thought was especially poignant from that book is that the most important indicator species of future sustainability of the land are there children in it? The children are the indicator species because they're the ones who are going to grow up and inherit this responsibility for protecting the land. If they have not been playing outside, conservation is not going to be important to them. So, we're here to remind them that it's out there. We play an important role in connecting local youth with the beautiful land that John's been talking about that surrounds them. We have incredible resources around us, and so we're working locally in our community to bring our children outside. If we don't get them outside, they won't grow up to protect it. So why connect youth with the land? Well, our number one reason is because we want to establish those conservation values. We want conservation to be important to them when they get big. But there's more than just that to it. There's a lot of really positive benefits in it for the children themselves. Playing outside helps with development of the whole child, holistic development. Every area, cognitive, creative, physical, social, and emotional, and spiritual are all going to be made strong if children are playing outside. If you go outside, you are going to use your observation skills, concentration, exploration, collecting, sorting, experimenting, building. It prepares you for academic learning. So even at a young age, birth through age 8, it's very important to go outside, prepare you before you even get to school. Creative, there's sand play, mud play, endless opportunities for pretend play. Have you ever seen a kid play with a stick? Pretending that stick is all kinds of different things, or building a structure. Physical, obviously, running, jumping, hiking, climbing, bouncing, tumbling, negotiating uneven surfaces. It helps with motor skills. Social and emotional, there's curiosity, discovery, there's personal initiative, there's working together with other children outside, there's building your sense of self. And then spiritual. Time outside really does help us to inspire a sense of awe. We learn to have this respect for the land, a sense of beauty, appreciation. So, and even building empathy. If children are in touch with animals, maybe caring for a small pet or a garden, it can help build a sense of empathy. So there are lots of reasons to put youth in touch with the land. And our education program is fairly new at the Trust. I've been there about a year, but John, maybe 2010? 2010 is when it kind of started being an initiative there. And we've built a program that focuses on 4 important areas. And we're going to look a little bit more closely at these 4 areas in the next couple of slides. So the first one is conservation connections in cultural heritage. We want to not just talk about kind of the biodiversity side of the land, but we want to also remember the people live on the land, and we want to preserve the culture and the history that's there as well. So I like to think of it actually with these 4 areas. It's kind of neat because we're encouraging children to explore almost different vocations, I was saying, with each area. The first one, conservation connections and cultural heritage, gets children to think like historians. So this picture, where it says a farmer's story, was a sort of a special event where the Land Trust put children at the Springhouse Community School in Floyd in touch with a Floyd farmer named Howard Dickerson. And the children got together with him and he told them his story. And it turns out, while he was out working on his farm, he had written a song. And so they came up with music for this song, and they made what's called a cranky to illustrate that song. And a cranky is almost like a primitive movie. It has a moving picture on the screen with a light projected behind it. So you can see there's a scroll on either side, and the pictures would be scrolling by as the song was sung. So they got together with him, they learned his history, they told his story, and they created this cranky, and they performed it at the Floyd radio show. So that's an example of something we might do for conservation connection and cultural heritage. This other picture shows children on a trip to the historic McDonald's Mill property. The kids got to tour the old mill and learn about its significance to the community. This second area is local food and farm-to-table initiatives. We get kids thinking like farmers as a vocation. Okay, so we brought children to see a farm in their community, and it's actually, many of you are probably familiar with it, it's right here in Blacksburg. It's a 48-acre property owned by the Bixel family, and it's where Blade Road Growing is. And we took, the Land Trust actually holds the easement on this property, and so we took students there to learn about local food production. They got to see the crops growing there on the land, and in fact, they picked up things and ate them. They were taking bites out of red bell peppers and different things. And so they got to see that happening. They got to see food for sale at the farm, and then they got to enjoy a meal, a healthy meal prepared from ingredients that were prepared on the farm that night. Our third area is water quality and habitat diversity. This gets children thinking like scientists. The picture at the top shows the measuring the health of a stream through water quality sampling. They can collect organisms. The number of organisms found determines the health, and the type of organism found determines the health of the stream. On the bottom picture, you see they're dissecting owl pellets. So getting them in touch with the science side of land. And then our fourth area is nature play and environmental appreciation. This is a biggie. We want kids to tap in to the emotional connection to the land. We want them to have a spiritual connection with it. That's what's going to cause them to think it's important to protect it once they become adults. Our pictures here show a nature hike with students from Valley Interfaith Child Care Center, where we did a summer series. We sponsored a summer series of classes, and you can see them inspired with awe by this gigantic fungi at the bottom. And then the other picture here on the right shows we took students from Harding Avenue, fourth graders from Harding Avenue Elementary School to Stadium Woods last year, and they did several different activities there, including a GPS activity, but this one, they explored patterns in nature, and then they collected natural materials and made their own mandalas out of those natural materials. So they're appreciating creating some art from nature. So in 2016, I have a nice little blue explosion on these slides because we do have some big projects that are coming up right now that we're working on this year. And the first one is a nature play space. And a nature play space is kind of it's caught on as a thing to build, I guess, in the world of nature education. I'm going to read you a definition of what it says when it's. According to the National Guidelines for Nature Play and Learning Spaces, a nature play space is a designated managed area in an existing or modified outdoor environment where children of all ages and abilities play and learn by engaging with and manipulating diverse natural elements, materials, organisms, and habitats through sensory, fine motor, and gross motor experiences. So we're hoping to establish a play space like that for children in our community. It would encourage families and children to play directly with nature. We've actually already met on site with Blacksburg Parks and Recreation. We're working on where we can set up this play space. And for features for our nature play space, we're thinking of a welcoming entrance that would help invite families in and children in, a gathering spot where we can maybe lead activities from time to time or where people could just meet each other and enjoy a picnic or a play. Interpretive signage, which would have ideas for nature play, and plantings of various types, maybe a butterfly garden or some blueberries, something like that. And then a wildlife habitat, we might do birdhouses, we might do a bug hotel, ideas for just how children could experience wildlife habitats up close and personal. A second big project we have coming up for 2016 is that we want to start offering outdoor education classes for children and families, perhaps even in our nature play space, but also on other conserved properties and in municipal parks in our service area. We are hoping to do them seasonally, so perhaps 3 to 4 per year, and they'll focus on one of our 4 guiding objectives that we talked about earlier. Some examples might include stream activities like I talked about before, bird watching, guided nature walks, plein air art stays where children can actually be outside painting or drawing what they see in front of them, or poetry walks. Those include you could walk around and read poems that are focused on nature, or walk around collecting experiences and using your senses in nature to write your own poem too. So all different ways of interacting with nature. And the third project that we have, which we want to kind of do again, this is one we're really repeating from last year, but we've offered field trips for local school and youth groups. We have helped local teachers and youth leaders plan trips to forests, farms, fields, and streams. This is something that teachers have a hard time having enough time and money to do. So there really is a need for us to help them in the community. If they're going to take their kids outside, they do need our help. We solicit expert volunteers to add value to learning and help supervise. So we rely on 4-H representatives or master naturalists. We've partnered with quite a bit. We cover transportation costs. And then I'll just tell you about some of the field trips we've done in the past. We took, like I said, I think before, the 4th graders from Harding Avenue to Stadium Woods. And that's an urban old-growth forest right on Virginia Tech's campus, in case you're not familiar with it, right there next to the stadium. So on that field trip, we brought them there, made them aware of the incredible trees, the old-growth stand-up trees right there in the middle of their community. We also had them, we had the Montgomery County 4-H Youth Development Coordinator come and teach the students how to do the handheld GPS units. They were locating specific trees, learning what those trees look like, and then using the GPS to locate it. They also did the mandala project and a root encroachment activity where they learned about how far out the roots go and how far away buildings and parking lots and things need to be in order not to damage trees. So it was a great experience. We also partnered with Christiansburg Head Start. In November and December, we sponsored some environmental education classes there where we led students in the study of This picture shows in the middle a study of leaves, and they were on a nature walk collecting leaves. So these are 4- and 5-year-olds. So the topics were leaves, and then seeds, birds, mammals, wind, and rain. And so we were talking about the students, about those things with the students, and they got to go outside and actually explore those items. We also went out to Floyd High School, where they have a school forest right on the property of their school, and we worked with the agriculture and horticulture students, brought a forester out, and this picture here on the left shows that forester working with the students, talking about a forestry management plan for that actual forest on their school property. So they got some real hands-on experience thinking about what might make sense to manage their own forest right there on their school property. We also brought out an agroforestry expert who talked with them about different agroforestry possibilities that they could have for the forest. Things like growing mushrooms on a log for sale, or ginseng, different ideas for non-timber forest products. And then the last example I wanted to share was we took students from Narrows Elementary Middle School to Mill Creek Park, and they were 7th graders. We took them at the end of the year, right after they finished all their testing. We had some master naturalists and a volunteer from the Appalachian Trail Conservancy come out and teach them about safety, and then on the hike, stopping to show them different trees, different plants, different animals. We saw several deer, a couple of turtles on the way, and then stopping also to show them historical details, like here's the water treatment plant from, for the town of Narrows that used to be, and then a dam at the top right next to the reservoir that had been built prior to the Declaration of Independence. So it incorporated natural history and also history. And for many of these 7th graders, it was their first nature hike. Many of these kids, they live right there next to the park, but many of them had never actually been on a hike just for the sake of hiking. They've been hunting maybe, they've been outside, but never actually just to take in their surroundings and the nature around them. So by leaving the stress of coordinating these field trips and the financial burden, we can ensure that they happen. Otherwise, it may not happen for these students. Our youth outreach inspires students to value their natural surroundings and fosters stewardship of farmland, forests, open spaces, and historic places in our New River region. I kind of think of it, our youth outreach program is like the insurance that the land trust will still exist in the future. It's there to ensure that someone else carries the torch to protect the land when we're no longer available to do it. This work cannot happen without community support. We do need help, and if you're interested, please do reach out. This is my contact information in case you're specifically interested in working with our youth outreach program. Thank you. That's all.
Yes, happy to take any questions you have about either the youth outreach programming or the other work of the land trust.
Sure. How big a staff do you have?
One full-time person, myself, 2 essentially half-time people, and then Justine, and then one other person is Justine's at 10 hours, and then another youth person is at 5 hours. So pretty limited.
Yeah, how do you fund your organization?
Community support.
You're a 501c3?
Yep, not problem.
You have fundraising events, don't you?
We have a number of fundraising events every year, 2 to 3 main events a year. We have our Farm Fest event at Glade Road Growing. It's Saturday, June 25th. And then our main sort of annual river level event, that this past year was out of the 3,000 Mill property, will be sometime in September. We get the set up for it.
Could you put that microphone on you?
Yeah, that's true. John's the expert of this. Pass the mic.
So yeah, we do have events. June 25th, the first event in Clay Road Growing, and then our River Revel event, our main sort of annual event, will be in September. I think on the 17th, Sunday, but I'm not sure yet.
I just wanted to know if the youth outreach program, do you coordinate with seeds at all? the organization that has been doing nature outreach programs for a long time?
We have met with Seeds, and there is a potential there for us to work together. There isn't, we don't have programs up and running currently, but we are aware of their work, and we are communicating with them.
Because that would be, I would think, a network collaboration. 'Cause
Certainly.
Is anything being done about the fact that the New River is the most polluted river in Virginia?
Certainly our conservation work, protecting properties along the river, keeping them from development is going to help with hopefully maybe stabilizing that. But we are not an organization focused on, say, water pollution, specifically. There is another group, they're not really very active in Virginia right now, but they act within the whole New River watershed, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia. They were doing some monitoring work a couple of years ago, but I'm not sure if that is continued.
The New River starts in North Carolina, is that right?
The New River starts in North Carolina, flows through Virginia, West Virginia to the New River Gorge, and then it's the Kanawha, and then the Ohio, and then it drains into Mississippi and the Gulf of Mexico. So we're a headwaters area. Obviously the regional sort of headwaters in North Carolina, but as a headwaters area, what happens to the water here very directly affects the water quality in the Mississippi, and then ultimately in the Gulf of Mexico, which has some pretty serious, particularly nutrient loading, large dead zone in the Gulf.
You forgot the fact that we're on the eastern continental divide, so we also affect the Roanoke River.
We do. Yeah.
And the Atlantic thereby.
Yeah, the bulk of our service area is in the New River, but portions of it drain elsewhere. Yes. Yes.
Do you have any programs along the New River per se to protect the siltation and the runoff of land into the river itself, to protect those banks and waters? Because the river right now is just absolutely muddy from siltation and runoff.
Well, there certainly is a problem, and some of the programming that we can provide information to landowners about addresses those sorts of issues. So particularly soil and water conservation districts have good cost share programming. There is a lot of programming through the Farm Bill, and that's information that we have, and we're really just sort of the providers of that information and help sort of link landowners up with the right program to do, whatever is their goal, then also hopefully to address, important natural resource related issues. Yes.
Can you talk about tax advantages to people who decide to get involved with the land trust in terms of reducing their own tax burden in Virginia?
Well, certainly as a nonprofit, any support that we're given is, tax deductible
I buy
donation.
land credits.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. So when landowners, one of the things I mentioned for landowners, one of the incentives, the tax incentives, are these Virginia's preservation tax credits, which landowners can use to pay their state income taxes. Now we work with a lot of folks who may be, let's say, land rich, but aren't income rich. They're farmers, and they're not, showing a lot of income. They're not paying a lot of taxes. So those tax credits might go unused by them. Fortunately, they are transferable, so they can be sold. So anybody who pays taxes, income taxes in the state of Virginia, can support conservation and can support landowners who take the important step of conserving their property by purchasing those tax credits from those landowners. And that can be done through brokers, they're private, industry, companies that charge the landowner a percentage of the amount of the credits transferred, or the New River Land Trust, who likes to see the landowners maximize their benefit from the tax incentives, will help connect buyers, people who want to buy tax credits, with landowners who have done conservation easements. And typically, you're paying 88-90 cents on the dollar. So it's a pretty good break, percentage-wise, 12 to 10% of what you would pay. If you normally would, pay $5,000 in taxes to the state of Virginia, you could cut that down quite a bit, give that money to the landowner, and get a break on your taxes.
And your organization facilitates that.
Well, I hesitate to say facilitate. Well, the reason I say that is because there's some sensitivity. We don't want to be seen as brokers. But what I do is I connect buyers with sellers. And then
Directly.
it's a deal between the landowner and the buyer. So yeah, I do facilitate, but there's just a certain amount of sensitivity as to how we express that. But yes. Yes.
My name is Lindsay West, and we have an easement on a historic property in town. It's an open space and historic easement that was done through the Department of Natural Resources.
Lindsay, did you go up there and use that microphone, please?
My name is Lindsay West, and my husband and I own 3 acres and a historic property in the town of Blacksburg. We have an easement, a historic and open space easement, which is, we did not work with the land trust for that. But I just wanted to comment on the value to a landowner of having such an easement and being able to take advantage of the federal tax deduction and especially the estate tax credit. Virginia is one of the leaders on providing tax credits for holders of easements. And it made the biggest single difference, not just to us, but I think to a lot of rural landowners, to be able to put their land into easements. And I just wanted to commend the state for their leadership in doing that and making it possible for so many more landowners here to hold the easement. I was particularly interested in your comments about the additional land up at Mountain Lake that you're working on a conservation easement, because that's a piece of property that my husband and I have known and explored for years and have often wondered what was going to happen to it. So I hope there's a good future in that. Thank you, John.
Did anybody have any questions about the youth outreach programming? Justine is actually got to be somewhere. Some kids are waiting for her, important kids. And so she's going to have to go. So if there are any questions, I'd like to please ask them now so she's still here.
It was so nice to meet you all. Jackie,
Well, I am not having to leave, and so I'm happy to answer any other questions now, but I'll be around also, and I'm happy to meet or talk. Yes.
So I might have missed the slides, but was there a slide that, or is it available to the public to see a map of what land has been put into this trust?
We have maps for every county, and also the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation is really the keeper of that data layer. And so they have publicly available maps that show all the conservation in the state of Virginia. The only thing I would caution you is they have a fairly wide definition of what is conserved. So for instance, someone brought up the arsenal earlier. The arsenal, some of the Department of Defense land is shown as conserved. The Boy Scout camp in Pulaski is shown as conserved, although it is not conserved in any sort of strong legal way that I'm aware of. But they would show all the privately owned lands that are in conservation easements. Yes?
Well, how many conservation organizations are there? Because there's some land on Crater Lake that's been in conservancy, land conservancy. I know the tavern, Ingles Tavern has been put in conservancy, and so has the farm, which we call, the 450 acres there, right near the dam.
Yeah, actually, Bud Jeffries, which is on the Radford side, he was on our board for quite a while. He does have an easement on that side of the property. He's a descendant of the Ingalls. And then on the other side, Mary and Mike Barber, we worked with them, and that was actually a project that took about 7 years to happen. These projects frequently take a long time because it's a big decision, and sometimes there's a lot of moving parts, particularly in the case of the tavern property where you had that historic structure. So there's actually a historic structure easement on the structure and the surrounding sort of minimal acres, and then the larger 300-acre farm that surrounds it are in another easement held by two different entities. So one is the Virginia Department of Historic Resources, and then the other is the Virginia Outdoors Foundation that I mentioned in my presentation. There are numerous sort of conservation organizations that operate in Virginia and in our region. The main ones, though, again, are the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, and then for our region, the main sort of nonprofit conservation organization is ourselves. There is a land trust out of Roanoke that overlaps us in two of our counties. So we both work in Floyd and Montgomery, and we work very well together. It's never been an issue. There's plenty of good conservation work to go around. It's really just a matter of, continuing to sustain the organization and raise the funds that it takes to pay me to go out and talk to people like yourselves, and then really critically the landowners. Yes.
Could you give me a clarification, because I understand the tavern, when it was put in conservancy, was supposed to be available to the public for educational purposes at least once a year. And the person who's a caretaker knows nothing about that. It was even in the paper it was going to be open. And he knew nothing about that, Mr. Roseberry, who's the caretaker.
It's my understanding that it is supposed to be open one day a year. I don't think it is something that is widely advertised, and I don't know how it is organized. It's not organized in any way through the land trust. But if that's something you're really interested in, I have a good relationship with the owners that I can contact them and ask them sort of how that is playing out. We are intending to run some programming through the Lifelong Learning Institute this fall, and it will include a presentation similar to what we've done today, but then it will be a field trip, at least that's what our proposal is, to the Jeffries farm on the Radford side of the property, and then to the other side, and actually to the tavern. And again, we're just putting there that proposal, so I don't know the details of it to give it to you now, but it will be, we've met with Pat Heyer and the Lifelong Learning Institute folks, and they were very interested in that. I have every indication that that will happen in the fall.
That section of the wilderness road going into the tavern is historical in its own.
Right, and then there was the ferry. You can't really see much of where the ferry was.
But they cleared that now. Let me tell us more of it.
I haven't been there in a couple of years. I was there when the easement was being negotiated and we were trying to finalize the deal, and that was back in 2009, I think.
They cleared a lot of that area.
Right.
And that's not connected, I take it to the market property though, is it, or is it the ferry itself? The ferry button, it's not just the button.
I think that's all that's there,
It
yeah.
is.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate you all having us. Again, I'll be here for a little bit. I encourage you to take the information that's at your places. It's just a general sort of brochure. It's a sort of our highlights newsletter that we sent out for end of last year, and then a little bit of information about our youth outreach programming. So again, thank you very much, and have a good rest of your day.
I just wanted to add my thanks to John and Justine. I just felt like I learned so much today. And I know that we all learn different things, focused on different things, but Mountain Lake Conservancy, I thought that was very special to hear about, and especially since we were just up there in the fall for our 50th anniversary of this group. the American chestnut sprouts. That was unusual. That was very special to find out. I thought they were all gone. And the parts about the children, I think that's wonderful to have programs for the children so that they learn about the great outdoors and all this holistic development and everything that we took for granted. And now these kids who are getting these outdoor experiences can grow up to be just like us. They can appreciate the outdoors the way we do. So it's just wonderful to know that there are people watching over our lands for the beauty of this earth. And thank you for your handouts, and I hope that we all take them home and share them with other people. And this has been a wonderfully educating time. Thank you so much, John.